which follow up on your your notes on inflation. So there's one, could you share your current thinking on US inflation and whether you think Powell's stance that the current rise in inflation will prove, quote, transitory? And what assets do you think make sense in a higher inflationary environment if Powell is wrong? And there was also a question about gold, which also comes up in a conversation about inflation. So what's your thoughts here?
I don't know whether inflation is going to be transitory. I promise you, Powell doesn't know. He may think he knows, but he doesn't. But I do think his policy is incredibly reckless, because if in fact we have inflation, it's going to cause all sorts of problems, one of which we already alluded to earlier, the stuff Jeff and I went around talking about. If the cost of money were to go up 5 or 6%, the interest costs alone could bankrupt our country. So I don't quite know why they're rooting for this inflation. But if I went back to Professor Shipman and Freeman's class, when you have this kind of fiscal stimulus, by the way, the infrastructure bill they announced they made a deal on. So if you get the continued government spending we're getting and the Fed financing it, economics 101, maybe that doesn't work anymore. But with all the shortages out there after the pandemic, and now everybody talking about inflation, which I don't remember since the 70s. My Pittsburgh friends who make like $50,000 a year, they're obsessed. Everybody has a story about their gasoline or this or that. The wealthy friends are talking about the restaurants. Once people start talking about inflation, it's been my experience, it's already too late. I have a partner here from Argentina, and Powell is under the illusion that if inflation really starts to ramp up, he can stop it. If inflation is in fact not going to be transitory, he's already way too late. And I'm not sure what this is all about, because we have nominal growth at 11%, which is the highest it's been in 50 years. And the story was, we wanted inflation up from 1.7 to 2. I don't know what difference that would have made, but we've already done that. So it's almost like they're embarrassed that they said this stuff and now they have to stick with it. But I think the policy is incredibly dangerous. But this is something I really need to be, I would say, open-minded on and cognizant of, because if inflation goes up, obviously you don't want to own bonds, you don't want to own equities. There's certain commodities, counterintuitively, you may not want to own, like gold, because interest rates will go up and gold trades more off the interest rates. But there will be things you can own, certainly commodity-oriented companies, and then what I would call real commodities. But inflation will just be a very difficult, you know how everything's been going up the last 2 years? It doesn't matter what it is. It can be GameStop, it could be bonds. It will probably be more of the opposite. So the one thing we should not be rooting for, unless you have the ability to short fixed income, which most people don't have the stomach for, is inflation.